today. But for those of you who don't know, there was a thing, the Sitzer, Burnett, and Morrill class action suit, which happened in Missouri, which, just to kind of cut to the chase on all of this, what basically they were saying, they went in and they filed a class action suit against NAR and these other companies, a lot of other major companies, which I'm not going to name them all again. You guys are kind of familiar, and it really doesn't matter. It's just more about the overall industry. And honestly, once this whole verdict came out, they filed another suit against all the rest of the companies. Like, it's a money grab right now. But they basically came out, and the final verdict was that the jury came in and said that, our industry has been price fixing. We've been conspiring with each other to price fix for years, which, when you hear that and you're actually in the industry, you're not somebody who's on a jury listening to one group of attorneys argue against another group of attorneys. When you're just in the industry, you're like, what the heck are you talking about? First off, for these companies to conspire to price fix, it says a couple things. Number one, it says that everybody gets along and they're conspiring together. Nope. If you're in this industry, you know that that's not true. Most of these companies don't get along. Most of if you're in a real estate office and you leave that office and go to another office, normally that original office treats you like, you're dead to them, which is the craziest thing, but I've seen it happen so many times. They're certainly not conspiring together. These companies don't conspire with NAR or vice versa. A lot of times they don't even play nice together. And so also to say conspiring to price fixing, think about that word price fixing. In a world where you can negotiate with the person in front of you. You can negotiate one competitor against another, which, by the way, consumers do all the time. Hey, this person's willing to do it for this. Are you willing to do it for that? That's called sales. Like, you have to determine whether you're good enough to get what you deserve or not get what you deserve. That's what's called the open market. Okay, when a retail store goes and sells the exact same iPhone at every store for the same price, they're not price fixing, or at least nobody says they are, right? And so in real estate, where it's completely negotiable, the whole idea of price fixing, when you have competition, when you have different places that offer it at different prices, when there's different commission rates based on how good someone is or what they can get, when you have some people collecting 5%, 6%, 7%, 8%, when you have discount brokers out there that any seller or buyer could use, when you can sell a home yourself, when you can represent yourself, I don't know how in the world you win a case saying price fixing. It's as if there's no option. It's like, just when I thought our world couldn't get any loonier, it's like, can someone just make this make sense? Can someone does anyone have common sense anymore? Does anyone? Or is everyone just a victim and everybody wins everything, and whoever seems to be on top at the moment is always the bad person we got to take down? Like, at some point, this culture of that nonsense has to stop. And you're now seeing it in the judicial system, which is insane. Like, it's absolutely insane for anybody who's in the industry. In the beginning, it was a joke. Everybody's like, there's no chance that could win. I mean, how could that be possible that could win? Price fixing, you can solve that really quickly. That person won't do that price? Well, that person will. Done. You can get a lower price. How is it price fixing when you can get a different price at different brokerages? It makes no sense. And at a time right now when it seems that the price of everything is going up, price of gas, price of food, price of goods, price of everything right now is going up. It's amazing how there's this attack on real estate people where they want real estate people to make less. And I don't know how the price of everything goes up, but real estate, which, by the way, makes up 17% of the economy, think about that for a second. It's 1/6 of the economy. How they're supposed to make less now and operate in a world where everything's just getting more and more expensive. And if you're listening to this and you're not in real estate and you're not whatever, I want you to think about if somebody came into your job and said, you're going to do exactly what you did before, but we're going to cut your rate, And a lot of you hear this who are outside the industry, and you go, well, I've already seen the comments on my TikTok, which TikTok's like the new Twitter. It's just a bunch of haters and, whatever. And those people come in and all they do is talk about how realtors make too much and this and that. And I think people actually think that real estate people make the percent that they get, And I'm not even just talking about taxes, which they pay a high tax rate because they're an independent contractor. But I'm also talking about the amount that they pay just to be in business. Like, I think that people need to remember they're running a business. Just because they're under a brokerage, they are responsible. They're independent contractors. They're responsible for their expenses. When they drive you around, they pay for gas. When they market your property, they pay for, like, everything they do, they're paying for, okay? So they're not just collecting money. Like, it's like, oh, they're getting 5%, they're getting 6%, they're getting, no, they're not. They're getting 3%, they're getting 2, no, they're not. It's not that simple. And then a percentage on top of all that is going to their broker. So not only are they paying Uncle Sam, they're paying Uncle Remax, Uncle C21, Uncle Howard Hanna, Uncle ERA, Uncle, like, whatever. Like, they're, like, it just gets split and split and split and split and split. And by the time you actually look at what a realtor is making, the average realtor makes less than what the average worker in America makes, okay? Now, the best ones are paid higher because they deserve to be paid higher. It's called capitalism, everybody, okay? And so I think we need to relax a little bit here on thinking that they're just killing it. And are there people in our industry who make a lot of money? Yeah, but they deserve to. Are there way more people who make almost nothing? Yeah, there's a ton of those, okay? And that's how it is in most industries. Like, let's just be clear about that. It's how it is in most industries. And I'll tell you, the companies that came out looking pretty good in this whole, I'm going to call it this whole mess, are companies like Remax and companies like Anywhere. You know, Anywhere that used to be Realogy that, has Coldwell Banker and Century 21 and ERA and Better Homes and Gardens and all these different companies, they both settled. And I think if I remember correctly, I don't have it in front of me, I think Anywhere settled for like $82.5 million and Remax settled for about $55 million, which sounds insane. Now, I know that a lot of you know that I am friends with most of the CEOs in our industry, but one of my good friends is Nick Bailey, the CEO of Remax. And, we had I was doing a thing for their Remax University that goes out to, I forget what it is, like 117 countries or something. And he and I were doing we had a 4-hour drive to where we had to go. And I was asking him about all this stuff going on, and there's a lot of it I can't repeat and I won't repeat because it's just not worth, it's not right, and I'm not going to give up any kind of confidence or privacy or anything like that. There's some stuff that remains between friends. But one of the things he did mention, which I think I can say, which is not a big deal, but it's just the truth, was when I was asking him, why did you guys settle? Because there's no merit in this, whatever. It really just came down to, from a business decision, it was eliminating risk and being able to move forward with consistency and not having to live in fear, because it didn't matter whether, the suit was right or not. What mattered was, did they have a chance to win? And what was the downside if they lost? And we saw that where, the damages were put at over $1.7 billion and potentially over $5 billion when you really look at that overall. And they didn't want any part in that. They were saying, let's just cut this right here. That's what settlement is called. Let's cut this, not have to worry about it. Let's lick our wounds and move on. And, they made agreements where they were going to change their business practices and that kind of stuff, which really just came down to, that a seller wasn't going to have to offer a buyer commission, which we'll talk about, where buyers weren't going to say that their services were free, because they're not free. They're being paid for by the seller, right? All of that kind of stuff. And there's an argument, by the way, you could say that a buyer is still paying because they're adding it onto the price. And I'm not going to get into all that stuff right now. But the point is that Remax and Anywhere, I think, came out looking pretty good, although they still need the judge to approve the settlement they did. But if it did, it came out as a savvy business move, because they eliminated, or they eliminated that possibility of potentially billions of dollars, which now these other companies are on the hook for. NAR and Keller Williams and these other companies that are, it's a big nut they're having to cover. Like, it's a lot, okay? And so we'll see how that all plays out. Of course, it's going to get appealed, so it might be all for none. A lot of people are like, well, so what changes? I saw something in a group today. How are you explaining to sellers how how the buyer's getting paid? And somebody was like, well, I'm going to tell them that the buyers have to pay for their own. Guys, that's not true. All of this stuff that just happened, nothing's actually happened, okay? It is going to get appealed. It is going to take years. Chances are NAR and these companies are going to win, because there really is on a merit. It really doesn't, make sense. But even if they don't, we're talking years. It's not a drastic change. And I've seen agents go all the way from, all-out hysteria to burying their head in the sand and acting like nothing's happening. But I'll say again, real estate makes up 17% of the overall economy. So we can't afford for real estate to not be a viable option or a viable career or whatever it is. In the end, we're going to prevail. And so everybody just needs to take a breath, okay? Stop allowing everyone else to determine what you freak out about, okay? We always grab the worst of everything. Or we read the latest Inman headline, bombshell, bombshell, bombshell. My God, I felt like I was in Iraq the last 3 weeks with Inman's coverage of bombshell, bombshell, bombshell. It's like when Ted Turner invented the 24-hour news cycle, and whereas we used to really have breaking news, now in absence of any breaking news, every hour there's a new show, and they need breaking news, and so for ratings, and in absence of breaking news, everything is breaking news because we need to be able to wait, this just in, there's a cow crossing the road in Missouri. And we haven't found out if it made it to the other side yet. More details to come. And it's just that's breaking news? What? But in absence of real breaking news, when you have a show every hour, you got to have breaking news. You got to have, whatever. And that's kind of how I feel about this. It's every little thing is and that's not burying our head in the sand. It's just really look at the facts of the case, okay? The only ones that won in this case were the attorneys, okay? If you don't believe that, just who benefited? Sellers didn't benefit. Buyers didn't benefit. Realtors didn't benefit. It's like a divorce, The only one who wins, the longer you can't come to an agreement, is the attorneys. They don't represent you. They represent the process taking longer. That's how it works in most cases. I hate to say that, guys, but you got to put your big boy pants on right now and just, that's the reality of the world. Most of them are not repping, the actual client. They're repping the process taking longer. And in this situation, nobody won. There's, I guess they won technically, but it really it didn't benefit buyers and sellers. It didn't help them at all. It gave them another thing to complain about. Allowed people to be a victim once again. Now we're victim of agents. Everybody's a freaking victim today. Now buyers and sellers who are selling their houses. So sellers are selling their houses at the highest prices they've ever seen in their life, but they're victims now. Now there's a new suit out, by the way, representing buyers. I don't know if you guys know this, but there's a new suit out. We'll talk about that. It was filed immediately following. It's a money grab, okay? And so when you really look at it, what it really means is that sellers are not going to be required to offer buyer agents a commission. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. I'm not required to shower every day. I'm not required to put on shoes before I go out in public. I'm not required to close my mouth when I eat in front of people. But just the fact that I'm not required to do so doesn't mean I still don't do it, because it's in my best benefit to do it. Some things you don't need rules for. Okay, I want you to remember something. 98% of all transactions last year were bought from a buyer's agent bringing the buyer. 98% was a buyer agent bringing the buyer. 98%. So if a seller does not want to offer out a commission to the buyer, go for it, but good freaking luck. Because you may have a rule saying you don't have to, just but I don't need a rule to tell me what's good for me when selling my home. This is the way that it works. Now, can there be adjustments? Absolutely. Will there be innovation? Absolutely. There's been a lot of tech in our industry and everything else. But let's not think we need a rule for everything to make it happen. If the rule comes down, which is what they ruled, but again, it doesn't actually go into effect because it's going to get appealed and everything else. But if that happens, great. You don't have to offer out a commission. Good luck with that. Come on, guys. Buyers agents are bringing the buyers. If they're not getting offered a compensation, you say, well, they should pay for their own compensation. Okay. So for all of you that created all of these rules and all of these rules within real estate around fair housing and around trying to make homes affordable and about trying to help minorities and poorer people and all of these rules to try to help people buy homes and all of these Fannie Mae and all of this stuff and FHA and everything to make housing more affordable. You are now going to turn around at the same time and say, by the way, when you're buying a house, on top of the percentage you're putting down, on top of the closing costs that you're now going to incur, on top of paying for an inspection, on top of all of these things, we're now going to add another 3% of it to your cost. And you think that's going to help people? You think that's going to help the housing market? You think that that is going to not unequally disenfranchise parts of our population more than others? Of course it will. Like, that's absurd. And so sometimes we get it's like victims end up eating their own. That's what always happens. You know, when you become a victim too long and you become, you know, whatever, it's like the whole woke thing. You know, it's like the woke go after everybody, and when they're on your side, you're like, hey, this is great. And then eventually the people who are on their side, the woke go after them too, and you end up eating your own. And it's just like nobody even knows who's on anybody's side anymore, okay? And so it's the same kind of a thing. Sometimes you can victimize to such a level that after a while you actually go after the actual victims and you end up hurting everyone. And that is kind of how I see this right now. And the real irony in this, let's just talk about this for a second. The real irony in all of this, am I saying that right? Irony. The real irony in all of this, guys, is that the attorneys for the plaintiffs made the argument that realtors were price fixing while they themselves continued to collect their standard fee from their clients, the plaintiffs, which were negotiable, and those clients could have gone to someone cheaper, and they could have represented themselves, but it wasn't advisable. Does that sound familiar to any of you? Those attorneys were doing exactly what real estate people do, and then they argued against that process. Like, think about that for a second. You know, for those of you that aren't sure how you were supposed to respond to your clients when they ask you, you know, why the plaintiffs won or what it means or any of that kind of stuff, I want you to tell them a couple of things. Number one, you're correct. The plaintiffs didn't win because their case was right. They won because they won. Literally, it's because they won. It's because they were better than the defendant's attorneys, okay? The plaintiffs had a choice, and they chose to pay a premium for a group of first-rate attorneys when they could have used cheaper ones, or they could have just represented themselves. And the moral of the story is who you hire matters, both when hiring an attorney and when buying or selling a home. And that is what cracks me up about this whole thing, is that exactly what they're fighting against, exactly what they're arguing against, is exactly what they were operating in at the moment they were making the argument. Were they price fixing? I think, should NAR file a countersuit against the legal system and say, attorneys everywhere, we're going to file this against the National Bar. You are price fixing. We know that it's negotiable who you use. We know you can get lower rate or higher rate attorneys. We know you can even represent yourself in a court of law, but you are price fixing. And now there's precedence, because the very case you just argued and said we were and won, you're doing the exact same thing. So now there's precedence. Attorneys everywhere, you're price fixing. How interesting would that be? Like, imagine if NAR came back and actually did that and said, you want to play that game?
They should.
You're price fixing. You want to play that game?
Yeah.
If nothing else, just to stalemate them and say, you want to keep doing that? We'll make the same argument. Bring it to the same court. Let's go get those juries. Let's go get those jurors and say, hey, same thing. They're doing the exact same thing. Okay? It's absurd, guys. Like, it really is absurd. Okay? Moral of the story, who you hire matters when hiring an attorney and when buying or selling a home. Now, do you need to understand buyer agency on a deeper level now? Yes. Do you need to have a buyer agency agreement signed? Yes. Most areas already require that, and for those of you that don't require that, it's good to have anyway. You're working with someone, they're hiring you to buy the largest asset they're ever going to own. Look, it's not that difficult of a sell, okay? The listing agent legally has a fiduciary responsibility to who? The seller, not the buyer. So buyers need representation. You're going to buy the largest thing, the largest asset you're ever going to own, and the person representing the seller and the buyer has a legal responsibility to the seller, and that's okay? No. You need representation, okay? I had a listing agent say to me the other day, I was at an event, and she's like, I don't know what all the, whatever's about. I can show, I can rep everybody. I'll do dual agency. We don't even need buyer agents. They're a waste of time. They just get in the way. They just whatever. So I said to her, I think you're undervaluing buyer agents. There's a lot of arguments we can have there and a lot of the stuff you just said. I'm not going into it all. But I said, let's just get really simple. Who's showing the property every time? So when you have 57 showings on your listing, you're showing the house 57 times? I just want to make sure you're doing it, because I thought that was the very reason you got out of and you got into being primarily a listing agent. And you saw her kind of like, she hadn't thought of that. She's like, shoot, so we got to figure that part out. Like, we got to, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, it doesn't make sense. Like, come on. There's a value there. People need representation. It's so crazy, too, because we're a world right now that pushes for representation in everything, having representation. And now we are making the very argument against representation, okay? It's insane. Like, it's insane. But yes, you're going to need to know how to get a buyer agency signed, why it's in their best benefit to use you. The truth is, I feel really good. We started a company this year called First Up, FYRST, firstup.com, FYRSTUP.com. If you're listening to this and you're a broker, you need this tool for your agents, especially right now. Like, as much as I'm arguing against this whole case right now, my God, is it good for my company, First Up, because First Up is a tool within a brokerage. The whole brokerage uses it. Super simple. It's not one of these. It does 50,000 things, and they don't do anything with it. There's no adoption. What it does is it digitizes the traditional whiteboard. It digitizes the traditional whiteboard. And in the old days, what would happen is that agents would come in, you'd have a weekly meeting, and you'd all gather around the whiteboard, and it'd be like, here's what's coming on to market, here's what we have, and you'd go over all this stuff. And, traditionally how it works is the time between when a listing is taken and a listing goes on the MLS, that time in between in most places, you can't market it publicly because of clear cooperation, but you could market it within your brokerage. And so there was a real advantage within your brokerage at being at those meetings because you saw what was coming on. You saw what was, and sellers got traction before it ever hit the MLS. And buyers that were working with your buyer agents had the advantage of properties nobody else had access to. And here we are in this situation where you're probably going to need buyer agency agreements signed all over again. And what a better sell with your brokerage than for your agents to be able to say, hey, when you work with our brokerage, there's an actual advantage. We have a proprietary list of sellers that nobody else has access to that we're only allowed to show to you and anybody else. We can only show it to our customers. We can only show it to the people who sign up by our broker with us. You have all the other advantages. We have the MLS. We have everything. The seller in most cases is still paying the commission, but we can only show this to people that we actively work with, that are clients of ours. What a better sell than that? Sign a buyer agency agreement with me. Nothing else changes, but we have a proprietary list of sellers nobody else has access to. And that's what a tool like First Up does for you and your brokerage. So if you're a broker listening to this, get on firstup.com, guys. Like, when I saw all this going down, I'm like, thank God we started this company. Like, that is perfect timing. FYRSTUP.com. You need to be able to give your agents a unique advantage in the marketplace that we're in right now. And more important than just a unique advantage, because I actually don't think that much changes right now, you need to be able to communicate a unique advantage. You need to be able to communicate to the marketplace a unique advantage. You need to be able to communicate to your agents why they're at your brokerage and what tools you're giving them to succeed in this marketplace, proving that value. And so that's one of the ways you do that, and we really can't be that shocked by what just happened, because when you have a jury that is making these decisions, juries are real people, guys. They're people who watch TV. They interact in the public space. They watch reality shows. And when you look at the public's idea of us as an industry, it makes sense. Like, they look at our industry and they see these reality TV shows where, nobody works. It's all just a bunch of social gatherings. Everybody's just drunk all the time. And once you get your real estate license, you immediately get bigger boobs. You get a better-looking spouse. You get a brand-new car, and you're rich. And so when you have a jury of your peers that is their idea of this industry, you can't be that shocked when they rule against the industry, which is really what they did. And when you have a lot of people in our industry that try to act and look like those reality shows, we can't be that surprised. And the good news is this, guys. This is where pros need to step up. This is a market for pros. Our whole advanced theme was pros versus amateurs. This is where pros need to step up. You are needed right now. We have, as an industry, we've been through a financial crisis. We have been through a pandemic where people were shut down and told they couldn't work, and just so many different. And now more than ever, we need to communicate our value, because when you really think about it, we went through a financial crisis, we went through a pandemic, and we are now going through something that when you really step back and take a breath, what it really means is that the day before that ruling, somebody could go on the MLS, an agent could put a property on the MLS and offer out $1 as buyer agency commission, and after that ruling, if it goes through, they can now offer 0. Think about what I just said. That's really what it is, because they're saying you don't have to offer it. Well, before they did have to offer it, so agents, when they wanted to do that, would offer $1. How did those sell? What buyer agent looked at it and went, $1? Well, Jiminy Cricket, I've been wishing upon a star I could make $1. No. Okay, they may not have a rule where they're going to have to offer out compensation. But again, we don't need a rule to tell us to shower every day. We don't need a rule to tell us to act like human beings and, whatever. Like, you don't need a rule, okay? So let's just put things in perspective, guys. Perspective is a powerful, powerful force, okay? You need to protect your peace right now. Protect your peace. Like, your peace is under attack right now. I shot an Instagram video the other day. I hope a lot of you watched it. And I said, whenever outside forces are trying to tell you where to focus, be careful, because it's a great magician trick. Pay no attention to my other hand, okay? And that's a lot of what's happening right now is here's where we want you to focus. Here's where we want you to focus. And your focus is everywhere other than where it should be, which is on yourself, what you can control, what you can do to win right now, what you can do to separate yourself from your competition, and what you can do to win right now. And the majority of people at the sound of my voice are going to get distracted, and they're going to focus on everything that everybody else tells them they should focus on. And then the few, they're going to get with their coach, they're going to make a plan, they're going to use tools like First Up, they're going to get their TC, their transaction coordinator, they're going to create leverage within their business, they're going to run an actual business. And while everyone else is distracted, they're going to take land, they're going to take property, they're going to take area, because the people in my community that have a coach and do the right things, they'll succeed last year, they'll succeed this year, they'll succeed next year, they'll succeed 10 years from now. Will things change? Yeah. Things will change, but that's fine. We're good with things changing. We adjust with them. There's always 2 businesses you're working in. You're working on the business you're in, and you're working on the business that you're going to be in. That's called change, and that's okay. We're not afraid of change. We're not denying change. We're also saying don't buy into everything changing overnight and these fear tactics and going crazy to this side and crazy to that side, because that's not true either. We're in an industry in the U.S. alone that has lost over 100,000 agents since January, and we probably still have too many agents. Think about that, okay? We've lost over 100,000 agents since January, and we probably have too many agents still. And for me, that's an example of not an industry shrinking. That's an example of an industry pruning. It needs to prune. A good plant to grow needs to prune, not die off, prune. You got to get rid of some stuff in order to grow and grow back bigger and better. And that's how I look at our industry right now. It needs some pruning, okay? And if you're smart enough to be someone who listens to this podcast, follows me, you're probably one of the ones that should still be in the industry. You educate yourself. You put your education first. You learn what it is you need to do. You invest. If you're one of our students, my God, you're a coaching student, you use one of our TCs, you use our marketing, you use First Up, you use all these guys, you invest in yourself. You deserve to be here. You deserve to be here. You need to remember that. But this is not over. Right after that class action suit was won, those same people immediately followed a suit towards a bunch of other large real estate companies And right after that, those exact same people, same attorneys, same people, same everything, same people who just fought for sellers, then filed another suit on behalf of home buyers. Think about that. It's a money grab. And I just read an article about this, and it said that home buyers are getting in on the action after the Sitzer-Burnett trial verdict and accusing a slew of real estate companies of engaging in a conspiracy to inflate buyer costs. So now we're price fixing on the seller side and inflating buyer costs on the other side. Because God knows it helps our industry when we inflate buyer costs, when we make it more difficult for buyers to purchase. It makes it so much easier. That makes a lot of sense. But what we just learned here is that it doesn't have to make sense in order for them to win. Okay, they just need to have better representation, because who you hire matters. but we should go after them for price fixing, in my humble opinion. Okay, 7 home buyers, led by Maya Batten, filed a federal antitrust lawsuit November 2nd seeking class action status against Compass, eXp World Holdings, Redfin, Weichert Realtors, United Real Estate, Howard Hanna Real Estate, Douglas Elliman in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Illinois, Eastern Division. They did not name NAR in this one, which is interesting. Defendants' unlawful, anti-competitive conduct causes America's home buyers to pay inflated commissions for broker services they misrepresent as free, to pay inflated prices for the homes they purchase, and to receive reduced quality broker services. In the complaint states, adding later, plaintiffs and the other class members have each incurred at least thousands of dollars in overcharges as a result of the defendant's conspiracy. What's interesting about this, think about what I just said. They said they continue to pay inflated prices for the homes they purchase. So what they're saying is they're inflating the cost by adding in the price, the cost into the price of the home. So what is the alternative? That they should take that money out of their own pocket and pay it? Boy, that sounds like a great alternative. Tom, you bought a house, right? How about if you did not get to buy it, the seller did not make it as part of what they offer out, and you had to come up with another 3%? How would that have helped your position?
Yeah, it wouldn't have. I'm just going to be real honest with you about that. It just wouldn't have. Yeah. Nope.
You're going to take a lot of people out of the buying pool when
Yeah.
you do that. Okay,
It's
this is
already
what I was
difficult
talking about.
enough.
Like, it's just victims attacking victims. You're just going to hurt yourself.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't, interesting. Anyway, a lot going on.